Susan, do you have your headset? It's 6 o'clock. Susan, do you have your headset?
Son of a gun.
6 o'clock. Susan, do you have your headset? There we go. And then
You ready,
what is
Dan?
happening? I am
Do you want me to
medium
do it?
ready. Yeah.
Okay, just let me know when you're ready to roll.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. It's good to internet meet you / see you again. Why is the chat box not popping? Because I switched it. Why is the chat box? There we go. And then everybody's around. Where's TJ? He'll be back.
I'm here.
Okay. Yeah. Start us off, Mac.
Welcome to the Workshop Show. That guy with the earphones and the real mic is my co-host, Daniel Andrew Boyd. Dan spent the last week pulling from his extensive storytelling experience, and he came up with a dynamite lesson plan for today's workshop. Back to you, Dan.
That is right. And this right here is Mac McDavid, and he is a true lover of stories, and he is my co-host, and he'll be helping guide us, and he's also going to be a featured teller for today.
Super. So we're the Workshop Show. We say that twice for a few reasons. We believe that the stories you tell will continue to evolve as you grow in your craft and as you just gain more personal insight. This is how the show's going to go down tonight. Dan starts by pulling us together for a 15 to 20-minute lesson here at the top of the show. And we spent the next hour and a half diving deeply into the two stories you'll hear tonight. We'll offer and receive feedback from each of the tellers. This close reading allows us to act like a director. After the feedback, we'll ask each teller to immediately tell their story again, trying out a new version, Workshop Show. This way we can see in real time how our feedback works. Did the changes make the story work better? Worse? Did we help the teller get closer to the heart of the story? Darn. What do I always forget at this point? Okay.
You did really well, Mac. I'm going to add for everybody, please don't freak. We're here to critique. It's not directed at the person, it's directed at the piece. For you in the audience, you can chime in too. And we hope you bring your comments and some love into this room.
Thank you so much. That's fantastic.
So we'll give you another heads up. We should really be the Workshop Show because each of the two tellers get tell their story 2 or 3 times. But at the end of the show, one of the people who didn't tell a story retells one of the stories that they heard tonight from their first-person perspective, as though they have lived through the original storyteller's experience. And now that you got the rundown, I'm going to kick it back over to you, Dan.
Thank you so much. Okay, so today, like most days, is going to be a little frazzled, and because there's so much packed into what I want to talk about, and I'm going to a little bit condense it, but leave some stuff for future weeks. What I want to talk about is the power of listening, and Story Luck, who is our umbrella corporation, non-for-profit, that produces all of our shows and the things that we work on. Our tagline is, we help you listen, tell, and create new stories. And that listening is really, really fundamental to what we do. And I believe that listening has to come first, that the listening helps you create better stories. And I've got some anecdotes that I'm going to jump into right away. I'm reading this book right now by a guy named Doug Lichtman, who is I think, my favorite storytelling person. And he's got a book on advanced storytelling. And the one that I'm reading right now is Storytelling Coach. And it's this treatise on how to be a good teacher. And what he's saying is, to be a good teacher, you should think of yourself more as a coach than a teacher. And the thing that you need to do most is listen and learn how to listen well. And I think I'm going to argue that listening helps you tell better stories. If you can listen really well, you can tell better stories. So, going to jump into an anecdote that he tells in this book. And it's, this woman gets to this land, and she heads into this bar, and she says, I've got this great adventure that I want to go on. I'm going to cross the Sahara Desert. And I need a guide to do that. And these three guys jump up and, we're all experts. You could hire any of us and we'd be great. And she's like, that doesn't help me differentiate. This is what I'm going to do. The next person who comes in, you give them advice, and whoever gives them the best advice, that's who I'll hire. So she leaves and she comes back. And of course, this is a story. So somebody did that. And she says, well, what's the advice you gave him? The first guy stands up and he says, well, this guy just wanted to go 2 miles east to Triton. I gave him clear, precise, nobody could screw it up directions. But then he talked to this Jamoki and he screwed it all up. And so she turns to that guy and she's like, well, what'd you tell him? And he says, no. I didn't screw it up. I fixed the problem because I asked him why he was headed to Triton in the first place. And he said it was to buy a trumpet. And I told him there's a fantastic trumpet maker right in this town. And so I sent him to the trumpet maker and gave him a 10% off coupon. But then this malarkey Mr. Mother sent him some horrible directions because he walked out the door and walked the wrong way. So she turns to the third guy and she's like, what'd you tell him? And he goes, well, I asked him why he wanted the trumpet. And the guy said it was to sing these amazing arias. And I looked at him like he was an idiot. And I said, what? You don't need a trumpet to sing an aria. You sing with your voice. And it just so happens that in his hometown was a friend of mine who teaches people how to sing. They live next door to each other. And so I gave him the information. He's back home right now. He's singing. And she hired the third guy. To listen well means you after listening, you ask questions. You ask good questions about what the story's about why the person is telling the story. What do they want to accomplish? This helps you because it helps you ask those questions for yourself. When you're listening really closely to a story, you're doing this active listening. You're doing this lean in kind of listening. We talked last week with Loco's story as he was doing his iterative process. We talked about that. Be there. Be in the moment. Imagine it. That happens when you're really focused on listening. You're building out the imagination in your mind. It's a practice that you can do and take for your own things. When you're thinking about your own stories, there's a certain part of you that needs to be able to listen. When you are figuring out what story you want to tell at whatever show or whatever place, you're going to get these little heartstring tugs along the way. Oh, I want to do this. Oh, I want to tell this story. And figuring out why is really key to getting to the heart of those stories and figuring out how to tell it better. And it's hard to figure out how to tell it better if you don't know why you're telling it. if you don't know what you're going to do. So when you listen to other people, you're doing this practice at how to listen to yourself. Listen for those subtle clues that tell you where you're supposed to be going. You'll learn how to ask those questions. And it's tough. And it can be super tough to do this practice. And you can sort of figure out how to tier it as you're going more. I mean, that's a big part of these workshop lessons, right? Everything's a skill. And if you practice it, you get better. Listening is a skill. And it's an almost meditative skill. You don't think about it that way because there's this passive listening where you hear people talk and you think about what you're going to say next. And you think about all the associations that are being made. They tell you a story about their mother. You think about your mother, which makes you think about your little brother, which makes you think about why you don't have kids, which makes you think about your ex-boyfriend. And by time you're done thinking about all this stuff, this person's been talking for 5 minutes. You've got to figure out how to push that stuff away and bring your focus back into listening. And after that listening, you start to ask questions. Why were you telling the story? What are the little things that you're focused on? What were the questions that came about that relate to the person who's talking to you? And I think if you think about it for yourself, there's always these people that we go to who we know are good listeners, who ask us the tough questions, who ask us questions that make us think harder about the stories that we're telling. If you become that person, you'll be better at doing that stuff for yourself. The second anecdote that I want to relay that was in that book was this Doug Lippman anecdote, and it came from somewhere else and so on and so forth. But basically the story was, this is like little parable, was there's this dude, and he's a really good cellist. And he happened to be staying in the same hotel as this dude who was a master cellist. Old guy, had just been playing his whole life, just incredible. And so first guy's name is Petro. He's sort of the savant, and then the older guy is Matt. Matt runs up to Petro and is like, I heard you were here. I need to hear you play. I've heard so many good things. I need to see them for myself. And so he forces Petro to sit down and play for him. And he's like, I want you to play this. Do you know it? I want you to play this and this. I want you to play these 3 things, and I need to watch. And the dude plays, and he's just sweating it. He's like, this is the worst experience. I'm playing for one person who's way better than me and who I super respect, and he's being a maniac. And I'm just like, I am a trash violinist in comparison to this guy. Oh my God. And it's just a horrible performance. He's completely miserable. He's like, this is the worst experience in my universe ever. Years go by. Petro becomes better. He's playing in this great hall. And after he plays, there's a standing ovation, and he walks out at the end, and Matt's there. And he's like, that was incredible. Do you remember? You played for me, and it was the best experience of my entire universe. And Petro's like, I was there. That is not possible. I know what it's like when I play like trash, and I played like complete trash. And Petro goes, yeah. That part, sure, but we don't talk about that part. Let me tell you what I noticed. And he says, on the first thing that I had you play, on the 7th stanza and the 3rd bar, you played it. Most people play it up here, but you played it down here. And when you did your little swingity swing, you swang it a little different. And then let me tell you, when you played the second piece, you did it again, but you didn't do it where I thought you were going to do it. You did it in the beginning rather than later. And then you had this other upswing where I always go down like this. Weren't you taught to go down like this? And he's like, yeah, but it's easier if you take it from here. And he's like, now that I've watched you, I know that. And I've changed the way I play completely. I would have never seen this stuff. a hard part of listening can be coming to conclusions too early. It's really easy to point out the stuff people are doing wrong. When you're really trying to listen and give helpful feedback, it's so powerful to notice the things that people are doing right. Those are concrete and specific. You don't have to figure out how to fix that, right? But it's so easy to apply it in the future. The people who can listen to you and hear you tell stories and figure out what your voice is and help you increase your voice, find the stuff you're doing well and amplify that, those are the people to find. And that's the sort of listener you should be aspiring to be. Because if you can see the true voice of people, if you can see the stuff that people are doing well, even when they're doing this other stuff that's sort of distracting, you're going to be able to more easily find that stuff in your own stories. And amplifying the good stuff is really, really key to making a good story happen. If you have a good beginning and a good end, you can screw up the middle. If you have a really, really good scene in there that people are going to walk away and remember, you can be flubby on the other parts. Get really good at finding your voice by listening to other people, helping them along their path, and that'll help you along with yours. And then I think that there's going to be a ton of stuff to talk about in this in general. But that can be
Great,
saved
Dan.
for another time. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Dan. Great. So we're going to do introductions now. And Trish, I don't know if you get these prompts, but if you want to jump in, please do. The prompt you all had this week, I'm kind of got to apologize for it, but it's when we kissed, and completing that in just a couple of sentences. When we kissed, and feel free to play with that. If that doesn't quite fit, or if that feels a little too intimate or something, just change it around. Okay? And I'm just going to call on you so we can get this rolling. Yeah, Dan.
Yeah, I'm ready. I like to tell stories about my dog, and so I'm going to say my dog does the sweetest kisses. He does these like little French kisses where he'll go to your cheek and just kiss into the air and just like won't actually touch. Just, that's it. That's all you needed. Little blows. That's what he does.
Kay?
I'm going to say that when we kissed, I knew that we were actually just friends after all.
Susan?
I'm going to say, so when we kissed, it was magical and I felt like I was home.
Noah?
When we kissed, she was Spider-Man hanging from the construction scaffolding to my Mary Jane.
Oh, TJ.
When we kissed, I knew then I'd want to spend the rest of my life with you.
Wow. Trish, you want to jump in? When we kissed?
When we kissed, I realized how long it had been since I'd kissed anyone. And I said so. And you said, you really need to stop hanging around with assholes.
Okay. Well, when we kissed, well, it's really when she kissed me. I was 13 and she was 15, and we were in a pile of leaves that we had roller skated into. And I thought I was going to faint. And then I just got so scared because it was so powerful. That's it for the intros.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you.
guys. Back to you, Dan.
That was lovely. Thank you everybody for sharing that stuff. Today, I'm gonna throw it to Trish. Would you like to go first, or would you like to go second?
I can go first.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Then we will set you up. There is no time limit, but I will clock your story.
Okay, great. It should be around 8 minutes. I time myself a lot. My dad and I shared a birthday. We were both born on June 9th, 27 years apart. I was born 11 months after my parents got married. And believe me, back then people counted. They definitely did the math. When I was a kid, I would joke that my mom really knew how to give great birthday presents and planned really well. But I can honestly tell you, my dad didn't like me. Don't get me wrong, he loved me. He thought I was beautiful and smart. He helped me win the 6th grade science fair. He taught me how to ride a bike. He taught me how to drive a car. He taught me how an internal combustion engine and a transmission work so well that in high school, I scored in the 96th percentile for general mechanical knowledge on an aptitude test. But he did not like me, not really. I have 6 younger brothers and sisters, so I had something to compare things to. He liked them, but not me. I was always in trouble with him, despite being a good kid. I didn't get in trouble at school. I got good grades. I helped around the house. Starting in 7th grade, I used to make dinner for the family after school. And in high school, I got a part-time job and paid my Catholic high school tuition for 2 years. And yet I was always in trouble with him for some nebulous attitude problem that I didn't seem to have with anyone else, not my mother or the teachers at school. He disliked my choices in general. My clothing choices were wrong. The music I liked was wrong. Once when I was 15, he got really mad at me for the earrings I was wearing. When I was an adult, it continued. He didn't like that I lived in the suburbs. He didn't like that the house I had lived in had a driveway. He once got mad at me for vacuuming my hardwood floors because he thought it was an insult to my mother somehow. And honestly, my mother did not care how I cleaned my house. But as goofy or as petty as these things may seem, I was acutely aware that he disliked me. And in general, I felt unlikable. I was shy and withdrawn in social situations, especially with new people. I had difficulty talking to people I didn't know well. More than once, when I finally did open up to coworkers or classmates, I was told that I had seemed aloof before. I said I was just shy. I thought I was shy. But in my 50s, I found out what my dad's problem was with me. And it was ridiculous and enraging and ultimately freeing. After my mom died, I ended up one of his 2 primary caregivers. I lived upstairs of him in a 2-flat. And when my dad got sick and ended up in home hospice for 2 years, I was there for him all the time. He had been in AA for many years, and his AA friends would hold a weekly meeting in his living room for him on Fridays so that he could stay part of it. I used to go down there after the meetings were over to chat with his friends, to thank them for being nice to my dad, just to hang out. So one week after the meeting, I was sitting there, and one of my dad's friends said something nice about me, that he must be proud of me or something like that. I don't really remember the specifics. But instead of saying yes, he told a story about something I did when I was 10 months old. And it was truly an epiphany for me. When I was a baby, I had a very common sleep disorder that 2 of my younger brothers also had. We would get on our hands and knees in our cribs, and we would bang our heads into the headboard. I know, it's a little odd, but it's actually really common. One of my brothers who had done that was sitting next to me when this story was told. So he and my mom had had friends over for dinner, and I was in my crib in the other room, presumably asleep, when they heard this banging. It was me trying to rock myself to sleep. But when their friends heard it, they were like, "What is going on?" And my dad described how embarrassing it was to have to explain this to their friends, The anger on his face and in his voice as he spoke was so intense. It was as though I was doing it right then. His current AA friends looked aghast. I pointed to my brother, who had done the same thing. And I said, he did it too. My dad said, I don't remember that. I said, he literally put a hole in the wall by his bed. He has bumps on his head from the continued pounding that he did for years. My dad said, I don't remember anything about that. Even though my brother was literally saying, yes, I have done this too, my dad would not believe it. And I was flabbergasted. I was hurt and I was so angry that I left. But ultimately, this was really good for me to hear. I was never shy. I was afraid. I assumed people wouldn't like me because my dad didn't like me. So why would anybody else? I thought I was an introvert, but I wasn't. I'm actually an extrovert. I know a lot of people will think that I should have confronted him about all of this. And honestly, I thought about it, but I didn't. He was an old man and he was dying. So he had so many health issues and just a little dementia that it felt like telling him off at that point would just be cruel. I talked about it with a therapist for weeks before I just decided not to do it, and I never did. Instead, I changed my life. A few months later, I moved out of state, and I started taking improv classes and doing stand-up comedy and then storytelling. He died a few weeks after I moved out, so he never saw me perform. He never saw the confidence I have now or the happiness I have finally found in finding out what was wrong. It wasn't me, it was him. That's it.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you. That's a very tender, the ending that you found. And that was 6 minutes and 30 seconds. So it's a good sort of moth timing style story. Hello to everyone in chat and the people who are viewing. Hello to FT Opar and CTD Chow. Yeah, I'm going to open up with something that's sort of a traditional question that we have. How did you feel about that telling? Were there things that you noticed that you liked or didn't like?
I noticed that I stuttered a couple of times, that the words didn't flow the way I wanted them to as I was speaking a couple of times. Nothing huge. And that the like my emphasis wasn't quite what I wanted it to be at points when I was speaking. But otherwise, I'm really happy with the ending that I was able to write for it. The first draft didn't have an ending, and it was, I think, slightly longer. But so I feel good about it.
Yeah. I think this was a good telling. For what it's worth, I didn't notice any of those stutters or anything like that. It seemed like a good, just telling from the heart kind of telling. It seemed like everything flowed in a natural sense for me as a listener. I'm going to open it up for other people. Do they want?
You know, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mac.
No, go ahead. No, go.
Oh, I just wanted to say I thought that line that about your father, that he didn't like me, and you kind of repeated, that was very powerful, and especially when you sort of give the contrast with, you were a good kid, right? You did everything right, and it comes through the story, right? You're caring for your dad, so that sort of that moment struck me and sort of set the tone. So in listening, that's what I found. That's what struck me the most. I did not notice any stuttering. And I actually wanted to compliment you. It was very, a story like that is a very emotional story. And it felt very fluid and very natural, as Dan said. The only criticism I have negatively is that I was a little unclear when it started, when the event happened where you were talking to his AA friends. I wasn't quite sure like when chronologically that happened, but maybe that was just me not paying attention enough. So, but yeah, that was awesome. That was very wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I've got my dad my internal critic.
Right.
We're criticizing my own performance more harshly than maybe I need to. So thank you both for saying that.
So Trish, I felt so sad as you told the story. You had so many really powerful details in that. You just didn't talk about a feeling. You talked about all these kinds of criticisms and whatever. And I guess one thing I'm wondering, is this still a very tender story for you to tell?
Much less so than it used to be.
Okay. Because there's a couple things that happened with me when you told the story. You seem to have distanced yourself from what actually happened. Like I didn't really feel strong emotions from you as you told it. And I think maybe that's the way you have to tell it, is without strong emotions. But the other thing I started thinking about is, what was going on with your dad? Was it enough that you just banged your head? What was he like in other situations? What was with this man who his firstborn daughter? So I really, it seems so outsized from what as an innocent baby, what you did. So it kind of left me with wondering a lot about your dad. You really told us about you and about his criticism of you. But I got wondering about what happened with this man. And the 11-month thing, it sounds like it was important because 11 months after they were married.
It was just their first wedding, or his first birthday after they got married.
Uh-huh. Okay. Anyway, but I've just wondered, did he not want to have kids? Did he resent getting married? Did he, anyway, but that's what happened to me. And maybe you just don't have that information or will never have it, but it was.
I had some of it, but I didn't think to include it, but that's interesting.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Thanks.
To interrupt.
No, he was asking. That's interesting. I think there is room for more showing. I think you get us in the place of the room where this is happening, and then dialogue starts to pour forth. And I think it's a difficult thing because when you start to summarize it makes it faster, and you're trying to get us from you as a baby, you as a little girl, to you caring for your dad at his death. So there's a big timescape to go with there. And I don't have a pinpoint for it, but there might be a way to condense some of that stuff into a scene where they're there with you. I really liked the dialogue and between you and your father, and your brother nodding yes, yes, and you pointing out, like I can see him sort of rubbing the knots on his head as you're describing them, and that room of people with the AA. And I want to be there with you in more of the scenes. And you might be able to, it might work instead of having the list, you know, he didn't like my earrings. He didn't like the way I cut my hair. He didn't like the way I cleaned my house because it was something to do with my mom. To just see what it feels like when you just show one of those. You know, my dad came over one time and I'm vacuuming and he's like, you don't vacuum on hardwood, which we all know is like ridiculous. Of course you do. Like, it's on the box, right? It's in all the commercials. This is really good. You can do carpet and hardwood. Like, we've all seen it, you know, or had a door-to-door salesman explain it to us. So I think if you put us in that scene, it'll encapsulate all these lists. As Noah said, that's another one where it's like very obvious that you are it's a great illustrator of this dichotomy of like, you're a good kid. Like, how do you get in trouble for cleaning your house? That's so frustrating for us as listeners. So we're like very on your side. Susan, can you hit us with a
Yeah,
question?
I just wanted to, and maybe I'm wrong, but Mac asked about the 11th month thing. So I'm guessing Mac is not an Irish Catholic like Danny and I and you are.
His
Are you
name
an,
is Devitt.
well, then I don't
Don't
know
take
how.
that away. Don't take
Well,
that
then
away
I
from me,
don't know
Susan.
how you don't understand the 11-month thing. So I'm a little confused then, because it's very important that the Catholic gets married before they have intercourse, and therefore the child has to come within those 9 months. And they're thinking maybe 10, because you can only have it like on your honeymoon wedding night. And so that's why the 11th month gets counted.
Was
Thank
she a
you.
bastard?
And so I just wanted to so I don't know if since you are Irish Catholic, then maybe, I don't know if there's another way for her to say that, because I certainly knew it. I don't know, Danny, I'm pretty sure you knew it. Yeah.
That
I
was
would
my
have been-
theory. So I feel like
I-
I caught it.
I would have understood 8 months.
You just don't know how picky they are in this counting.
Yeah. Kay, did you have a note that you wanted to talk?
Yes, Trish, thank you so much for sharing. I really enjoyed your story, and I thought it was masterful how you actually spanned a good part of a lifetime going from infancy into the 50s. And you kept us in the feeling of the moment. And folks have said this before, without maybe your emotion in the storytelling, stopping us from being able to hear all of the parts. So I thought that was great that you were able to convey the emotion of it. Like, my dad loved me. He showed me how to do all these things, but he didn't like me. And just even your delivery there of setting that up was powerful, and I really appreciated it. I would love to see that addition that Dan said as well, about maybe going into just one moment that illustrated how particular your father could be, and having that dialogue between you and him.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And Trish, what I would like is to see what the impact in that moment was on you. You know, if it was more of a, oh, here we go again, or if it was like your heart just fell or just sank as your dad found one more thing to criticize, So I think getting his behavior and then really hearing how it, I guess, pierced your heart is my guess, but maybe not. Maybe you just had a hard shell by then.
Yeah, that's. I'm interested in just hearing that answer, because you're an adult, I assume, in that anecdote with the vacuuming.
Yeah.
Were you? And that seems to me so crazy. that you just like this? I'm talking to a crazy person.
I was at that point. It was just like, this is what he does. He tells me that I'm wrong about everything, and
Yeah, you were aware that it was.
it was just. Of course, what is he? He never cleaned anything in the house. What the hell does he know about doing cleaning a rug or a floor?
Right.
I never saw him with a mop.
Right.
I mean, he did stuff, but he was not cleaning the house.
Yeah. You Kay has the next question, but I also wanted you to. I'm interested in the answer that you said. You felt like you could elaborate a little bit on the sort of person your dad was, that he would hold the baby grudge for his entire life. And I have some guesses, but if you had thoughts on that, I think that would be helpful to hear.
He was the fifth out of six kids. He was the baby of the family for 4 years. And then he had a little brother born, my Uncle Michael. And then when he was in his mid-20s, he found this beautiful young woman. He fell in love with her. They got married within 2 months. She was pregnant with me in the late 50s. You didn't get to sleep with your wife the whole time she was pregnant like you do now. Back then, sex got cut off early. So I stole the woman who he loved. He couldn't have sex anymore for a while. And then I was embarrassing him in front of his friends. I was just a pain in the ass to him. And then by the time my sister was born, when I was 13 months old, the train was just out of the station and they just kept chugging along, pumping out kids for several years. So I think he just resented me, and that I never really understood why until that event happened, till that he told that story, and it
just all clicked.
Yeah, it just all clicked. Like, oh, that's what it is. It's not me. But I'd internalized so much of it for so long that it took,
Yeah, I mean, that's a really cool thing about this story, is that, in stories, especially these moth style stories, that's one of the things you're looking for, is this change and having an epiphany moment where your perspective shifts. So pinpointed like this is really good for it. Kay, you had your hand raised.
Trish, thank you, because even that piece of insight that you just gave, between you and Susan, you talked about the Irish Catholic perspective here, where there's like the element of propriety and guilt and shame. And when you talked about, okay, well, you took your dad away from the woman that he loved, and he had to kind of pull back on this, interaction that he might have wanted to have with her. That's very pivotal. I noticed that you said that you were caretaking for him as he was at home doing hospice, and it sounded like you were no longer his caretaker even before he passed. Is that true, that you left before he passed?
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to include this in the story, but I would be curious if you wanted to give maybe that pivotal moment, that insight that you had given what you could give, that you were there for him his whole, the whole time that you've known him throughout your life, and you knew that you'd given enough in that moment and you didn't have to be there. You could go on the next chapter of your journey. I don't know if you want to add that, but if there was a moment there, I know I would appreciate it, because your aha was my aha just now as well.
Okay. I thought I had done that, but I think that you're showing me that I didn't do it as clearly as I wanted to. So thank you. I can make it better with that. Thank you.
And you could give us the emotion behind that. I mean, Kay, as you talked about that, you had so much emotion, really, but that emotion of, I've had it, I'm out of here, that kind of thing. Yeah, powerful.
I'm trying to think because we have this moment, is there room to do interesting things with the time frame? A lot of times you want to have your story start as close to the inciting incident as possible. I like this linear structure in this story. So this would, a few weeks ago we talked about the cycle of how you build a story. You see it, you work on it in your mind, you tell it to yourself, you tell it to your friends, you go away for a little bit, and you can have these times in private or somebody really close with you, you play with the story. I think this would be a suggestion for one of those times where you're really working on it, where you want to do the play thing, but playing with the sequence of events could have interesting effects here. Starting out the scene where you're really caring for your dad. Show us that place, because that's a really powerful place. My dad's in hospice. He's going to be in hospice for the next 2 years. Did I catch that correctly? I mean, that's kind of a long
he was
time. Yeah, that's a long time to be in. Say again?
They actually kicked him out of hospice after 2 years because Medicare only pays for it if you continue to be declining, and he was stable for too long, so they stopped providing the service, and then he lived another 6 months, and he was getting sicker again, and we were in the process of getting him back in hospice when he fell and hit his head and died. So it was odd.
Yeah, that's a long time to be in a hospice, and that's like a stressful thing for you. So starting out in that place, we show you taking care of him, and then you cut to, when I was a little kid, I was shy and withdrawn, and my dad, he loved me, but he didn't like me. You hit us after you show us your love for him and your loyalty to him. I could imagine that being a strong opening, right? Because I agree with everybody. This idea of he loved me, but he didn't like me is a punch. And I think if you put in your love for him first, that might even emphasize it. So one of the things we do is we have people retell their stories or retell parts of them. We've sort of been picking on the vacuuming thing, but I think all of those scenes are ripe to be expanded. Him telling you, I don't think I have them all written down, but being weird about earrings, being weird about the way you cut your hair, all of those seem ripe. Is there anyone that is calling to you that you would be willing to just sort of suss out and play with us right here now, and just build that scene out and do 2 minutes in it?
I don't know. Let me look at my notes.
Yeah, take your time.
Just kind of like you're right there at the moment. You're telling us in first person. Here you are. This is what's happening.
Yeah, I know what you're looking for. I just I'm sorry. I'm really struggling to do that right now.
No, that's fine.
It just might be too tender, Trish.
I think it might be.
Still.
It's a lot.
No,
Yeah,
we don't want to push you at all.
Right,
The
right,
story's
right. That's
very powerful.
yeah.
I,
That's
I
a
mean,
big
I'm
ask.
still in therapy, but
No, that's great.
but not Friday. Um,
Okay, so let's see if we can play around with another angle then. Did you? Here's a question, and I don't think that this is something that would end up being in the story itself. Oh, now I've got a bunch of ideas. I like, yeah, I'm switching up. So I like the idea of your ending. One of the things that I really liked about your ending is it would have been really easy to go with a meta ending where you're like, and now I'm so gregarious and outgoing that I'm on stage with you. I'm in this workshop right now, and you're like calling out this thing. But I think you want to keep, I think it's generally a better choice to keep us in the story, not make people remind them they're the audience and you're up there because we're so with you in this story. I wonder if there's an anecdote in there that encapsulates it. Because that was another thought for me about like, what does it look like if we start at the end of this story and we have the conclusion and we see you succeeding? Is there a moment where you're on stage where you think you're freaking killing it that you could tell us about? Or your first time on stage, or one of the shows you produced that you were like, this was so good. I'm so glad that I brought this into the world.
yeah, I guess I have all of those things. Right? You know, I mean, like everything changed. So and like really cool things are happening in my life.
Yeah.
I produce a comedy show. I host a mic. I perform. I've been paid to do comedy and storytelling. In the last year, I actually made $150.50 in 2020 performing. And not even all of it from home. Some of it was live.
That's
in
awesome.
February. Damn it. I paid gigs for March. I'm still mad. I don't know who I'm mad at, but I'm still mad. I could talk about this. Back in February, I was performing for I was invited to be on a show, a comedy show. I was doing stand-up, and it was really kind of cool. The building used to be owned by my mother's dad back in the 50s. And it's called I always forget, it's the Celtic Crown on Western Avenue. And I was in the basement, and it was a crowd of mostly my friends. The other comedians kept making jokes about everybody there except for the other comedians having 401ks and and I was performing in the basement of this building, and it was really cool because I was getting paid. My jokes were killing, and it was like a tie to my mother's family and my own family history. And here I was being successful in this place that was awesome. But
yeah, no, that's good. That's good. I don't know whether that feels like it clues you into something, but I appreciate knowing that. And I could, yeah. I don't know how that feels for you, but like,
well, Trish, I could hear you saying the last sentence, and I really wish my dad was here right now to see me do this.
Or even, just for him to know that I did it. I don't think he would have ever
acknowledged it.
I think he would be embarrassed by me doing this still.
Or you could say, I'm really glad my dad didn't live long enough to see me doing this. And then you launch into
it must build him.
one more thing for him to critique and be cross about.
Right.
Oh shit! What you should have said. I can't tell you how many times that man said that to me. What you should have done.
King mansplainer.
Oh,
Yeah. The other little question I have about building out is, after this scene, did you touch back with your brother? Did your brother say, that was weird?
I didn't.
Okay.
You're from an Irish Catholic family. You add alcoholism into it. People don't talk about stuff.
Right. No.
We don't
No,
talk
it's
about
very-
anything.
Yeah. Trish was in a closed workshop with me on Sunday where she was helping Susan and I work on a story for Story Collider. And yeah, it's going to be about our parents and growing up. And it's a bit of a tough story, and it is true. I reached out to my brothers to be like, just so you know, I'm going to be telling this story on a podcast. And the first brother he was like, oh, that's fine, and quickly changed the subject. And the second brother was like, why the fuck would you do that? You're an a-hole. And I was like, Mom gave me permission. And he's like, okay, that's fine, but I still don't want to talk about it. So yeah.
This the one who caused the car accident? Because
No.
I'm still mad at him.
Right. I could tell that you're mad. I will say the one who caused the car accident has been through much therapy and is a changed man.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, then I'll
I've-
stop being mad at him.
Yeah, I have found a lot of storytellers are big proponents of how important therapy is. That's been a fun thing. So, yeah, I think that this is enough that we've given you what we can give you, and there's some ways to play with it in the future as you're building it out. Do you have any questions for us or anything you want us to hit?
No, I think you guys covered pretty much everything that I might have.
Yeah,
Might have asked.
that's great.
Let me say this. That you and Noah, that Dan and Noah both said, I didn't notice anything about your performance, was just like, oh, I still do, it's like a little reminder. I still have that in me a little bit, even, 5 or 6 years after, because it's 6 years after I've had this like epiphany, and it's still there a little. It's not as bad as it used to be, but it still comes up sometimes. But thank you for the opportunity to do this.
Yeah, thank you for working with us and sharing the story. It's very cool. Mac, how are you feeling? Are you ready? You are.
I'm ready.
All right.
You ready for me, Dan? Okay.
Super ready.
I always wanted to be a hero. I think I still do. I'm 10 years old. I'm taking my usual route home from school. I'm walking across the green expanse of baseball diamonds and soccer fields in the park that runs along Fairview Avenue. Wait, a white single-engine plane is coming in low. God, it's in trouble. It glides down and crashes hard in the grass about 50 yards ahead of me. I see the flames coming out from behind the propeller. No, I don't run away. I run toward the plane, yank open the door, pull the pilot to safety. He's rich, and he knows I saved his life, and in turn, I'm going to make sure that I have everything I want for the rest of my life. I love that fantasy every time it floods my mind as I cross that field on my way home from school. I feel a rush of energy and excitement. Almost gives me goose pimples. But the next day, I'm on a mission to be a real hero. I march up Burberry Lane from my house. Halfway up the block, my sidekick, Georgie Ketter, slips out through the gate in his white picket fence. You up for this? Yeah, I guess so. He shuffles along behind me. We round the corner at the end of the block, and there it is, in deep slumber, the dragon. An old, gray, faded 1940s Oldsmobile with its flat tires sunk deeply into the stubble of the vacant lot. All the neighborhood kids are afraid of it because that old car, it's lousy with bees. I'm not afraid of bees. Early in the day, Gloria Applebaum, the black-haired, blue-eyed damsel across the street, warned me to watch out for bees. They were all over the lilac bushes in her backyard. I announced, bees? Ha! How could a little bug like that hurt a big boy like me? I mean, the scale was all wrong. You get that, right? Be little, me big. Back to the dragon. I gave Georgie, who was standing a safe distance across the street, my 10-year-old, steely-eyed, brave hero look. I woke up the dragon with a mighty whack on its fat fender. Now, you might think that bees go buzz, 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 just like in a little baby's picture book. But what I heard from those bees was more like an angry growl. It turned into sort of a screeching whine, like you hear in those old World War II movies when a plane is going down into a fatal dive and the pilot is struggling to get out of the cockpit. You might say then and then, now, right then and there, I had a conversion experience. I got goosebumps all over. I think my hair stood on end and I took off like a shot. Georgie had a head start. He had bolted as soon as I wound up to whack the fender. He peeled around the corner first and down Burberry Lane. I was just seconds behind him. That deadly whine of angry bees right behind me. Now, I was somebody who loved to run. My kids were digging in and I was gliding over the pavement. But that angry whine of bees was gaining on me. And I was gaining on Georgie. He was huffing and puffing with his short legs and Buster Brown street shoes flapping on the pavement. As I pulled up next to him, he was almost to his gate. His eyes were bugging out and his lower lip was trembling. Georgie, my faithful sidekick, a full year younger than me. I liked him because he always let me be the leader. He was an only child and the poor little rich kid in the neighborhood. That's why he had a picket fence and a gate. Now stop here for just a moment with me. I could have been a real hero right then. I could have dropped behind and sacrificed myself, let the bees get me while Georgie made his escape. Never occurred to me. I pulled out all the stops and sprinted by Georgie for home. I heard Georgie's terrified yells as he struggled to open his gate, and the angry swarm of bees, really my angry swarm of bees, began to sting him mercilessly. I slipped through my side door and sat down on a kitchen chair, breathing like a ruptured elephant. But I was home free. His mom banned Georgie from playing with me for almost a month. And when we got together again, he never mentioned it. I never mentioned it. I never talked with Gloria about bees again. And I always thought of myself as kind of the fast, clever kid that got away. I could laugh about it. But you know, Georgie might have saved my life. Later, when I got stung by a wasp, my arm swelled up to twice its normal size. Georgie, you were the real hero there, even though you didn't mean to be. And I'm sorry now that I didn't at least apologize to you or somehow make it up to you. So I'll say it again to you now, wherever you may happen to be. Georgie, you were the real hero. I was. Hard to say it. Hard to say it. The real coward. Thanks.
That's great. Yeah, that's awesome. How long have you been working on that?
Oh, I've been working on it for a couple of weeks,
Yeah. I mean,
and
it's
I do have some questions though about it in terms of my feedback,
okay.
the kind of feedback I'd like.
It is
Um,
very fully formed. It doesn't feel that
well,
way to you. All right.
here are
Give
here are
us
my
your
questions.
questions.
Well, the first time I got to tell it in front of some folks for feedback, they had trouble following the action, actually what happened when. And I want to know if that might be true right now. Um, the the let's see, I got some notes here. Hang on, I'm reading your notes, Trish. And what about the structure? I always say to people, hey, you should start the action right, right where it's, really close to the beginning of the story. And I played around with this action and then I interrupted it. I did some other things. And the other thing is, I don't know how long it was, Dan, but I think it could be cut down. And so I'm interested in where it could be cut down and any other feedback you have where you think this story could be played with. I guess the last thing is, I really struggled with the ending, and I actually had kind of an epiphany as I did this. So I started thinking this was a funny story.
Right, right.
So, and if the ending hit or not.
Yeah, I that was good direction for us. We were talking a while back, Noah and I, after the Bob Dancer show, and one of the things that came up is like, the show is the workshop show. If somebody brings us a fully formed, fantastic story, we're gonna spend time talking about it, no matter what. I do feel like anything that we're gonna tweak is gonna be a little bit that gilding the lily thing. You've really got
Really?
a great story here. It's fully formed. It feels very ready for me. People can give me pushback if they were confused or answers to that, but I think people were in it. I'm also going to throw out to Trish. People in the Twitch chat said that they really appreciated you sharing that story. So there was that.
That's not.
Yeah, I followed the action. One of your questions was, the way I heard it, correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's a similar thing that, what if you started right when you smacked the tire, right, and the beast started coming at you?
The fender, yeah.
Yeah, the fender. I think that is a choice. To me, it wouldn't make a strong. I don't think it would be that different. I don't think it would be bad, but I don't think. Yeah, Kay.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mac, about the order of your story. I really enjoyed the fact that you brought us in with this very vivid daydream. I felt like I was there with you as a kid, just imagining this low flying plane and saving this pilot inside and the riches that were going to come to you after this point. I was with you in that. And so that imagining of yourself as this hero, to be able to contrast that with you later, running for your life. You didn't know that you were necessarily running for your life, but you knew those bees did not sound like anybody you needed to stick around and meet. So I thought that was great. And I wouldn't change that actually. I thought that having that lead up to that action was perfect.
Okay. And you got it that it was, did it take you a while to realize it was a fantasy?
I did get that it was a fantasy, but it was so well formed and so vivid that I started to think like, wait, did Mac have a situation where there was like a low flying plane in his? No, no, wait, that's no.
Oh,
Okay, it was good.
over and over again.
Right. I
Over.
followed. I was just got so into it that I was like, wait, it's a story. It's a good one. A story in a story, and I think you did that well.
Okay. And I didn't have that in my first draft of the story, my first shot. So thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, what will you read for us your opening two sentences or
Yeah. Say, I always wanted to be a hero. I think I still do.
yeah, yeah. I have a question for you and for people. Would it change anything if he didn't do the switch up? Right? If he started off being a little kid, right? If we know right in that first sentence he's a little kid, do you think that that would have a significant change for you?
That did trip me for a second because because then you're like transported into his youth, and that's not what I was prepared for. But as soon as I got comfortable with that idea, it made total sense. So yeah, that I feel like you could just, and it might be better. I feel like I think so.
Yeah, I will say I was, as soon as the airplane happened, I was in the 80% range that this was going to be a dream, or I thought I had missed a line and that you had already told me that you were a kid. And so I was with you, and it would not bother me. It's so vividly told that even if I know you're a kid doing a daydream, it's exciting for me. That would be my guess.
So I could leave out the first two lines. Is that what you mean? I really don't need
No, just get right in there. You know, those two lines are good. You can do the normal thing and just say, back in whatever time period this is, right? 19 whatever. Back in 19
50.
I wanted to be No, back in 1950 I wanted to be a hero. I still think I do. And back then, and then we know you're a little kid right away.
Gotcha. Okay.
And yeah, it didn't bother me that there was the switch up, but I don't know that it is a fun game for people to play. I think that's going to be like, some audiences are going to really like it. Oh, he pulled a fast one on me. And other people are going to be like, no. But I don't think there's anybody who would be bothered having that scene be clearly set out and we know you're in your imagination. And so it becomes a choice. Like, you're not always telling the story to everybody in the audience. Sometimes you're trying to excite the people who get excited by rug pulls and twists.
Mm-hmm.
I like the airplane story a lot because it kind of put me in. It's like a tall tale, right? And it sort of and it plays into this idea of the world being so much bigger than you when you're a kid, and I liked that about it. But also, I thought it did set the tone of the story as a little bit humorous. And you said the ending, right? It turns a little serious at the end. And there is a tension there. As you guys have probably noticed by now, I am always trying to make everything a little funnier. And that last line where, you can just say he was the hero, and you don't have to say that you were the coward. And I don't think you were a coward. That's not the story. You weren't a coward. You went you were foolish. You weren't afraid when you were supposed to be, but you weren't really a coward in the story. When I was listening to it, so that was sort of maybe if you're making it a serious story, you take that out. But if you want to keep it sort of a little more lighthearted, I like that.
Okay.
And the other thing I wanted to touch on is that scene where you're in the kitchen and you're just like, I just imagined you slumping down and just like all tension leaving you, where you're so relieved. I wanted like a sentence or two more on that. That was like, I don't know, the moment of the story that just really I could identify with you.
Trish, you had something?
Yeah, I really liked the airplane part at the beginning because it shows how much you wanted to be a hero, that you saw yourself as a hero, and then you did like a really normal thing, running as fast as you can from the bees, for a 10-year-old kid or however old you were. I may have misheard, but I thought that contrast or that little story kind of highlighted your desire to be that person. I want to be brave. And then you're just, it reminded me of that old joke or story. You don't have to be faster than the lion. You have to be faster than the guy you're running from. Running from a lion with. You were just faster than your friend. He got eaten by the lion. But I can see wanting to be a hero and then doing a normal thing that a normal person would do, like run for your life, and feeling bad about it later. Like you weren't really a coward, but your friend was the hero. He took the hit.
Right.
But I liked the story. I thought it was well done. And I think that part really emphasizes why you would.
As the stories get further and further along, focusing in on those beginnings and endings and really giving that time and attention is a very important part of the getting your story from that good to great level. And so this does give us an opportunity to talk for a while about endings, and maybe what we could do today is like play with some of the different ones. How do you feel, Mac? Personally, I think you're going in the right direction by adding weight to it. I get Noah's point that the coward thing might not feel right to the audience. And just thinking about it, one of my thoughts was you could end it on the cliffhanger and not say it out loud. It's hard to say. And let us have it. So that's a way to play with it. The other thing that I'm thinking about is if you go with Noah's route, I think you can still have the same level of gravity by making him a hero because you were in a real life or death situation. Right? So if you give us that sort of like, in this version, it's a little bit part of the humor. He might have saved my life because my arm blew up to twice the size and I was only stung by one wasp. If you give that gravity, sort of the way you do at this ending, I think that gives it the weight of him being a hero.
Without me saying it? Is that what you mean?
No,
or...
I think you can say the hero part and you don't need to say the other thing if you give us that emotion of the realization right? You got to be there with the little fear. Like, that's something that I'd like to see you play with, I think.
Yeah. Could you tell us, like, during the chase that I don't know it, but
Yeah, how do we
I'm
get
going to
in there?
die if these, like, can you give us that information at some point so that we know that you are actually running for your life, even though you don't know it? And we kind of see that he just saved your life, even though you don't know it as the character. I don't know how you fit that in, but that might be something that goes with what Dan said.
I gotcha. I kind of like that idea, is that you get to know that too, that even though I didn't know it,
Yeah.
I was running for my life. This is a really good thing for me to talk about, because I think one thing that's happened with me is as I've revisited just moments in my life, I have a way of telling stories, like to friends and whatever. And I've told this story to friends just casually, but it wasn't until I really sat down and started working on it that I realized, holy shit, it was, Georgie was like, the person that gets thrown off the back of the sled in Dr. Zhivago or whatever for the wolves to get,
Right.
And that I really could have stopped, and that I always thought it was kind of a funny story. Another one of, I screw up and other people take the consequences. And a lot of those, even with Georgie. And so it was a real, and what I just want to say the other thing, when I first started doing this story, I of course, with my Catholic upbringing, my Catholic school and stuff, I wanted to be a hero for Christ too. Like I thought I'd be a priest and I would be a missionary and I'd go to Cambodia and I would be eaten by the natives, and I really wanted to be a priest in elementary school. And, I was really trying to be a good kid, but when push came to shove, I try and take myself a little bit off the hook, because I never thought about stopping. I never
Right.
thought about not running for my life. But so the
somebody
impact
would
for
have.
me, but the impact for me was, in working on the story, was, holy shit, he saved my life. He was kind of a doofus, but he really did maybe save my life. And what about all this hero stuff I was so into back then? All the books I read, all the heroes. So I don't want to I want to get myself a little off the hook as a 10-year-old. And it wasn't like I thought, oh, I'm going to leave Georgie behind. I wasn't thinking that fast.
Right.
But I also want to own, that if we're talking about heroes and cowards here, or the reluctance to save somebody else, take the hit for somebody else. Maybe there's another way to say that. So.
Yeah. Real quick, to the couple people who just joined, we're working on storytelling, and we're just doing a workshop where we go back and forth talking about stories and sort of punching them up and making them better. And then at the end of the show, we're going to have somebody tell the story who hasn't told yet. And afterwards, everybody is allowed to join us on Discord. And that link is in the chat. What? Yeah. Could you,
Sure.
as the exercise for today, try to do, I don't know where if you just started, what if you started it, and I'm open to suggestions from you on this, Mac, but if you start it from running away, he's playing at the lock, and you pass him, and before you do it, if we just played, we set up what are the different endings that we've come up with so far. Keep the same, but don't say the word coward is one. The second one is Noah's. As soon as you pass him, you give us this idea of I don't know this as I'm passing him, but I'm allergic to bees. And if I got stung by a dozen bees, I would probably die. And then you finish it up, and then you round back to that where you say, I've told this story 100 times as a hilarious story, and it wasn't until I wrote it down that I had that thought that I could have died.
Okay.
That this isn't, that this isn't funny. Georgie's a goddamn hero. Or how,
I think
but the idea
yeah.
is to make the weight be, instead of in I'm the coward, have it
I got away.
just be
I'm
about
ready.
him being a hero.
Okay, but I got a way to sort of work it, I think.
Okay.
So those, I'm
okay.
ready. You want me to go?
Go ahead.
So those bees, they're like right behind me and they're catching up. I'm just running as fast as I can. And there's Georgie. He's ahead of me. He's huffing and puffing, and he's got those street shoes on and they're flapping against the pavement. I'm like gliding. I love to run, man. And I get up right next to him, and Jesus, he's so scared. His eyes are bugging out. He's got this, right on his top lift. You can just see him starting to tremble. He's close to his house, but I could have stopped right there. I could have let those bees get me. I could have been a real hero then, all over the neighborhood. I could have bee stings all over me, and people could be like, I could be showing that to all my friends. But two things. Well, but I just sort of sprinted ahead, and I never thought about being a hero at that moment as a 10-year-old kid. But the weird thing is, he probably saved my life. And I didn't know this at the time, but later, as a teenager, I got stung by one wasp. My whole arm swelled up to twice its size. If those bees had hit me, I just might have died right there on the spot. So when I think back on this story, that I always thought of it like I was a smart, clever kid, like, hey, I outrun the bees and Georgia gets stung and I get home and I sit in the chair and I collapse and I'm breathing like a ruptured elephant, but I'm so relieved to be home. But really, who the hero in that was? Georgie was the hero. He saved my freaking life. And me, well, I don't know. What do you call somebody who's not a hero or doesn't even think to be a hero when their buddy is going to take the hit for them? What do you call that?
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, did that change things? Did that do the job? I guess that's trying to go with the feedback. And did that do it?
Yeah, Noah, what did you think? You got to unmute yourself.
It felt more exciting, and I think, like, yeah, I liked the transition there, between lighthearted and fun, and then it very rapidly, at the point of, like, the climax, transitions into serious. I did like that, but also, like, it's also new that I feel like that's all I can say.
Yeah, Susan, you have something you want to jump in with?
I mean, just when I heard the telling of the story, and especially, the pilot thing and everything, like it's almost seemed like a Snoopy story to me, where Snoopy's always the hero. And so at the end, I think I would want more of a Snoopy kind of thing. So not quite, you like, yeah, if you want, to switch it up on me that you're not the hero, but make Georgie the hero. But I'm not sure, like, I'm willing to let you be the coward. Like, but that's just my take, like I,
Yeah.
you're still Snoopy, so you're still cool. That's how I want it to end.
Thank you, Susan.
Yeah. Trish has something, but real first, I want you to try it one more time, and to see it without the cowardice. You can put the stuff in like you did, but without the cowardice, and the ending is just lionizing this guy.
Okay.
And
All right.
Trish, did you have one thing that you want to say before he tries again?
I wanted to reiterate what Susan was saying and what I said earlier. You're not a coward to not want to get stung by a bunch of bees when you're a 10-year-old boy. You're a 10-year-old boy who's scared and running, and has a pretty strong survival instinct, which you want. And I'm a mom, and I am mothering your 10-year-old self, saying, don't beat yourself up for not wanting to be stung by bees.
Kay, can you jump in?
Very quickly, I kept thinking discretion is the better part of valor. Good on you that you did what you could to diffuse the bad situation instead of making it worse. So you're both heroes. Like Georgie actually helped by distracting the bees, we think, and you helped yourself by not waiting around to see what in the world was going to happen to you. Good job.
All right. I don't feel as strongly as those guys that you aren't a coward, but I do want to
Thank
hear
you,
this.
Dan.
But I do want to hear the story without any coward in it, just to
Sure,
see how that lands.
sure.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm just going to do the ending, okay? So, thinking about that now, I realized that, Georgie really saved my life. Like in a lot of ways, I mean, he didn't mean to be a hero. I mean, he didn't choose that. I don't think he would have if he knew bees were involved. I guess I could say he didn't drop back, I mean, he didn't sacrifice himself that way. But he really was the hero, and because of that bee allergy, he probably saved my life. But I still want to be the hero of this story, and I just can't quite figure out how to do it. In fact, the first wristwatch I ever bought was a Snoopy on his doghouse, and the Red Baron was the second hand going around and around. So I'd like to make myself the hero of this story, but I guess there's just no way to do it. Georgie, wherever you are, I got to tell you, thanks for taking the hit for me. I like this a lot. You guys have given me a lot to play with in this story, and a lot of different ways I can hit it. And that it didn't feel like it was a fully formed story when when I was ready to tell it tonight. But it's given me a lot to sort of chew on in terms of playing with it. Thank you.
Yeah. I think people push in these moth stories. I want it to be about you. I want it to be about you. But I think you could do it and completely disappear at the end. I think you could pull off that, like, this last part is all about Georgie, and I don't want you. If you're up for doing one more for me, in the directorial, I want you to just push this angle like a little bit further, but don't pull anything from him. Right? Give him all that credit. Don't be none of the little like he didn't mean to be a hero. I wanted to be the hero and it didn't happen. I guess it's just let him be the hero. You know, sometimes heroes are born and not chosen. You know, you know, say it that way, right? Georgie, you know, all of a sudden have it flash. Georgie's with me through thick and thin. He's there all the time. And because he's there all the time, every time there's danger, he's got to put up with it. And this is what happens because he's such a good friend. You know, I think that there's a way to spin it where we don't have to, you know, just the hero stuff.
Okay, now, is it okay if I talk right to Georgie, or would you rather me not do that?
Everybody's
Georgie,
nodding. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Let's see it.
So, Georgie, wherever you are, I just want you to know you saved my life that day. And really, you're the hero of the story. I mean, you're like the guy who pulled me out of the burning plane, you know? And you hung with me through thick and thin. You took the hit for a lot of things that I did. Your parents were much stricter than I was. But I got to tell you, you're really my hero today, Georgie, as I remember and I tell this story. A little too much of me maybe in there, but
no, that's sort of what I was looking for. And that was a really interesting thing. You sort of did that in the first version where you were talking to Georgie a little bit.
Yes.
And I feel like I didn't notice it until you did it for this one. Mm-hmm. So okay. That was an interesting thing to do, and it really felt. I think if you're gonna do that, you know, you want to play with projecting that on the audience so the audience feels like they're Georgie.
Gotcha.
I think that would be the way to go, and like have it be like you're telling them that they're the hero.
Got it.
I think that would be the way to play with it. To me,
great.
Yeah, I liked all of these. I'm not like leaning one way or the other. This is just a play thing, and like, where do you want to take this story? You know, do you want it to be about the coward ending? How do you want to? I think we all agree that there's some weight at the end is good. It's a very playful story, and then you hit it with the weight, so it's a little bit of gives it that thud. But you've got a lot of options.
Yeah, I really appreciate the feedback that I got to take my 10-year-old boy off the hook. I think that's that. You know, I can tell these stories and I don't feel bad about it, but because I was only 10 years old, but I can see the audience reaction is pretty strong that they feel like they got to defend. You feel like you got to defend me, because so much of what we get blamed for as a child, like we carry, you know. But I like it better taking myself out. Thank you. It's really helpful. And this has been fun, really fun. And I can't wait. Well, I don't know what's going to happen next, but
yeah.
Okay.
So next, what we are going to do is we're going to have one person, I'm going to throw it up to everybody in the chat. Does anybody feel a super strong inclination that they really want to be the person to retell one of these two stories? Okay. Susan is on deck, and she is going to be the one who tells the story today. And what she's going to do is, we do this exercise for two big reasons. One is hearing your own story, plot point by plot point, told by another person, shows you that this other person was listening. It makes you feel really validated and heard in the best sense. That's what we're going for. For an audience, it allows you to see very concretely how one story that is exactly the same changes for you really deeply because it's told in a different voice. And you can see concretely how powerful voice is for story. And that's the one thing that you've got that nobody else will ever have. Nobody's going to ever sound exactly like you. And so pulling out those things, sort of like what we talked about in the beginning, finding that voice, emphasizing the things about your voice that make your stories special and cool and awesome, is what takes it to sort of that next level. So Susan is going to retell one of these two stories. You got to unmute yourself, and then whenever you're ready.
It's really, really hard to decide which story. They're both so very good. And I don't know. I think it's going to be probably a bigger stretch for me, but I'm going to try, Max, and see if I can pull this off. So, I'm about 10 years old, and I've always had this fantasy. Someday, I was going to be special. I was going to be the hero of my own story. And I'm walking home from school through the baseball field. It's like, it's kind of the way our neighborhood's situated. It's a big circle, and our house is on one side and Stephanie's on the other. And so we kind of always meet in the middle around this baseball field. And it is just like awesome. Just there's no houses. And, I call it a baseball field, but really it's a field and a bunch of kids, marked out in the dirt bases. But it's awesome. So I have to to get to Stephanie's house, I have to traverse through this. And this is my daily routine, and it takes a bit. So I'm thinking, and all of a sudden I see coming down a single engine airplane. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's coming down. And there it does, crash in the middle of the field. I run up to it as fast as I can, and I see the fire just starting at the back engine. And I run in and I open up that pilot's door and I take him out. And I'm just like, forever he's going to be thankful and I will be rich. Wow, it was a good fantasy. I got to have it every day. It was so much fun. So there's also this other thing in this field. It was an Oldsmobile from the 1940s. They called it the Dragon. And everybody was afraid of the Dragon. I couldn't quite figure out why you'd be afraid of the Dragon. Just an old 1940s Oldsmobile. And Stephanie and I, we just love to climb trees and sit around. And, I'm thinking this would be a total cool fort. We're gonna get this Oldsmobile, made up cool. So that's what we're gonna do. So I grab Stephanie and I'm like, Steph, come on, this is gonna be our new cool fort. And she's like, Sue, you've heard about the bees. I'm like, what? She's like, there's bees in that Oldsmobile. I was like, oh, come on, Steph. It'll be fine. No worries. Like, we've got this covered. And you know what? I'll just bring like a big stick or something. Like, and we'll kind of suss them out if they're there. And she just looks at me, not sure if I'm crazy or if it's gonna work, but she follows along. So we get to this Oldsmobile that I'm sure is gonna be the coolest Ford ever, and we're gonna make it up right. And we get there, there is this buzzing noise. And I've got the stick. And Stephanie, she like hangs back a bit because she's like not real sure this is gonna go down well. I'm like, no problem, no problem. We'll just kind of suss them out. So I take the stick and I just wham it hard against the fender. And these bees are not the buzz bees that you hear when you're reading like your little kid story when you're 2 or 3. No, this is more like a siren. It's just like, I know, like back when I was little, there was no killer bees, but now I think those might have been killer bees. They just started swarming out. And Stephanie, she ran as soon as she saw me get the stick. So she's booking home. And she's fast. Don't get me wrong, it's not like she's not. But when push comes to shove and I've got bees following me, yeah, I'm faster. So I'm shoving past Stephanie just as fast as I can. And his bees are following, luckily, the last person to be shoved back. Stephanie's going into her white picket gated house, and I'm flying by to my house. And guess what? Those bees, they ended up on Stephanie. Took Stephanie's mom about a month before I was allowed to play with her again. Luckily, she's my best friend. We played. I didn't mention the bees. She never mentioned the bees. We were just friends. But you know what, Steph? You were my hero that day, and I'll never forget it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan. And thus concludes our show. Trish and I think everybody else will be hanging out in the Discord, and you can hang out with us and ask questions. I saw that Snoopy joined us. It's funny. We got Snoopy in the chat today, and some serious Snoopy stories going on. So that was a good coincidence. So hopefully people can join the Discord and hang out with us, and we'll be there for a half hour or so. Thank you so much for joining us, and we do this every weekend. Like, subscribe, follow us. Every Monday, 6 p.m., we tell stories, and it's just a workshop. It's like a little free class that we're just doing for the world. And I'll see you guys soon in the Discord. Bye.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for
Bye,
coming in.
everybody.
Thank you. Thanks for coming, Trish.
Thanks for having me.